Hey folks, welcome back to Dub Africa. This is Chris. Well, as I told you, you heard it here first. The left will go out of their way now to undermine and destroy the reputation of our serving military members, both active, guard, and reserve, as well as veterans. And they've already started with a bunch of idiotic stories and nonsensical comments, including vile statements by Tennessee's Representative Steve Cohen claiming that 75% of the Guardsmen were unreliable and were a threat to members of Congress. What a pathetic individual. Well, what's the latest story? Big uproar, big hubbub, a lot to do about what went down yesterday. That's right, folks. On the 21st of January, 2021, news broke that we're done with the Guard. They've accomplished what we needed them for, and so they were tossed aside like rags. What am I talking about? Well, folks, the empty virtue signaling nonsense and also an intimidation tactic that was used on the false pretext of a domestic terrorist event or insurrection at the Capitol, neither of which happened, folks. 36 unarmed criminal trespassers broke into an undefended Capitol building, which strangely was undefended. Not only was the Capitol building undefended, but the D.C. Metro Police, a force of 3,800 officers, was absent. Nowhere to be found on the mall, at the Capitol grounds, on the 6th of January. Why is that? Why did the Sergeant of Arms, who works for Nancy Pelosi, well, did work, he's resigned now, why did the Sergeant of Arms refuse assistance from the Department of Defense and from the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the days leading up to the events? Why is it now we're told after the fact that supposedly there were all kinds of indications, intelligence? It's just fiction, utter fiction. Because if it's true, then heads should roll. But no heads are rolling. Only the head of the Capitol Police and the Sergeant of Arms have resigned. That's it. The rest of these clowns are still carrying around, doing regular business and earning a paycheck. So what happened with the National Guard? Well, we saw this 25,000 Guardsmen from states all over the Union sent to protect the Capitol. When riots burned and looted D.C. in the aftermath of the assassination of Martin Luther King, only 13,600 Guardsmen were called out to restore order in D.C. There was no disorder in D.C. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., essentially declared martial law on the 6th of January with a curfew that began and took away our civil liberties and rights. We were no longer allowed to gather on the streets of the nation's capital, courtesy of her governance. All over a false pretext. While politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other cowards in Congress hide behind their chairs and talk about how frightened they were they're going to die because 36 people were running around the building, a bunch of yahoos, unarmed, mind you, while hundreds of armed Capitol Police were there to defend them. Yeah. So they called out the Guard because of the threats, and magically a leaked classified document from the FBI was given to Fox News. And we were told that there are threats against all 50 capitals in the nation. Right-wing, white supremacist, racist, insurrectionist, terrorists were going to attack our nation's capitals, as well as D.C. Therefore, we must call out the National Guard. Really? No, not a single Capitol attack. By the way, the threat was before, on, or after the inauguration. We don't know when, but it's going to happen. Well, of course it never happened because it's BS. Utter nonsense. As was the need to call out the National Guard. This was simply an effort to ensure that when no one showed up for Sleepy Joe's inauguration, that no one be carrying the story about how few people showed up. So we put 25,000 National Guardsmen on the mall, wasting their time and government resources. And of course, they went about the whole situation from the outset with their effort to destroy the military and its reputation, one well-earned and respected by American public, with nonsense like Steve Cohen's garbage and slander. And then the FBI begins a political loyalty test? A political loyalty test of the Guardsmen? Are you serious? Every single one of these men and women take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And they do it on foreign shores and at home. I think I would question the loyalty of members of Congress before I consider questioning the loyalty of our National Guard. But they did. So what happened next? Well, apparently the Guardsmen are staying in hotels. That's news to me. We've got a Guard armory there in D.C., and we've got a few military installations in the Capitol, so I'm wondering why they're staying in hotels. But whatever. Who's paying for that? You and I. For Guardsmen who have no business being in D.C. It's simply an intimidation tactic meant to prevent us from assembling and attending this ridiculous North Korean inauguration. Wow. Well, National Guard are now allowed back into the Capitol after 5,000 were forced out from the breaks. Why? Because it was perfectly okay when they were needed to send a fake message about how they're under siege. It was a lovely image to have guardsmen with weapons and camouflage uniforms sitting in the rotunda of the Capitol building to show that the nation was under siege, that democracy was under assault. Only it wasn't. So they were a useful prop and a wonderful prop to show that we needed to protect Congress. But once the need for that prop was done, piss off, guardsmen. Piss off hardworking Americans who support and defend the Constitution, unlike these lying sacks of garbage sitting in the Capitol building. Well, they were kicked out of the Capitol building where they were taking their breaks. It's kind of cold outside, folks. It's barely above freezing, below freezing at night in D.C. And they were taking their breaks inside the Capitol building. But now that the illegitimate presidency is underway and Joe Biden is instantly destroying America's national security, we can move on. The Guardsmen are no longer the prop we need. We've made our point about the Capitol building being under threat and politicians' lives in jeopardy. Oh! Only they never were. Never were. So what do? Get out of the building. Get out of the heated Capitol building. We don't need you here. So 5,000 Guardsmen between shifts were kicked out, and they were put into a parking garage in the Thurgood Marshall building. Yeah. That's right. Wow. An unheated parking garage where they could maintain any social distancing. They're all crammed in there, 5,000 people in a parking garage. Cramped conditions inside, whereas the rotunda in the Capitol building has all this open airspace, as this much of the Capitol building. Wow. Some of the guardsmen complained that there was a single power outlet in the entire garage for 5,000 people. Remember, it's the 21st century, people. Everyone has a mobile phone, needs to recharge their phone. A single outlet. And of course, you and I can go to Starbucks, or, well, we can't now because of the lockdown scamdemic, but we could go somewhere and charge our phone. These guardsmen can't, pulling 12-hour shifts. They have to have a dead battery, and their loved ones can't reach them. Their real jobs, their day jobs, people trying to reach them from there. So it's not a trivial thing to not have electricity. It's a big deal. So they had a single outlet, no internet because it's blocked inside that building, and just a single bathroom with 2 stalls. 5,000 people, a single bathroom. Wow. We treat criminal alien invaders at the border, the southern border, better than this. They have more than 1 bathroom with 2 stalls. 5,000 of our guardsmen supporting and defending our Constitution and the fraudulent, trumped-up nonsense about security in D.C. And they're relegated to a parking garage. Why? Because they're not needed anymore. This is a prop that's unnecessary. We've made our point. We've made our point about the fake attack on the Capitol building, the fake claim of domestic terrorism, and we have done a good job using a crisis to denigrate a sitting president. And that's what they've achieved. So the prop is no longer needed, folks. Well, this idiocy has prompted the governors of Florida and New Hampshire to recall their guardsmen back to the states. Texas has already said the same sort of thing when this loyalty test was given. They already have loyalty. And it's not to those politicians. We don't take an oath to support and defend politicians. We take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And that's what every guardsman does. And the loyalty test was not only insulting, it was disgraceful. Yep. Well, there you go, folks. Now that the press has found out about it, after the politicians cast them aside, they'll take their breaks in Emancipation Hall, Capitol building. Now, to be fair, the politicians pled ignorance to this. Of course they pled ignorance to this because they don't give a crap. They don't give a crap. Wow. They really do not. This is what some guardsmen said. They felt incredibly betrayed. They had just spent more than a week helping fortify and defend and protect the Capitol. Wow. What else did they say, folks? They're really, really angry here, the National Guardsmen, with good reason. Really angry. Wow. Wow. This is okay. So here we go. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu says, I've ordered the immediate return of all New Hampshire National Guard from Washington, D.C. They did an outstanding job serving our nation's capital in time of strife and should be gracefully praised, not subject to substandard conditions. Chris Sununu, Governor of New Hampshire. Well said. Yeah, well said. Unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. Now, the Capitol Police are responsible for this. You know, the Capitol Police who didn't show up on the 6th of January, who had no backup plan, who failed to put up any protective barriers, who failed to control entry to the building, some of whom let people in the building. These same Capitol Police are the ones who cast aside the Guardsmen like rubbish in the bin. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Crazy stuff. Now, this is what one Guardsman had to say. Yesterday, dozens of senators and congressmen walked down our lines, taking photos, shaking our hands, and thanking us for our service. 24 hours later, they had no further use for us and banished us to the corner of a parking garage. We feel incredibly betrayed. You should feel betrayed, as should every person in uniform. These scumbags in Congress wanted you for a photo op. They wanted you for attention seeking. They wanted you to further a fraudulent political narrative. They don't care about you. They never did. If they did, the things that they do to military benefits, to military service, to retirees, the way they scam us out of our retirement, would never happen. Another soldier talking about COVID-19 said, "We're on top of each other all day, every day. We've given up." Another said, "Our guidance is if you're not eating or drinking, you need to be wearing a mask. We've already had just some in my unit alone test positive for COVID, and they're just keeping us packed together with caution tape in small areas. And that's the only authorized area." Wow. Now, according to the Daily Mail in the UK, because this story's spread all over the world now, according to the Daily Mail in the UK, the images of Guardsmen sparked fierce reaction from politicians on both sides of the aisle, with Democrats and Republicans demanding answers as to why the men and women who were told to leave the Capitol. Some offer their offices. I don't care. If you're leaders, why weren't you aware of this? Why aren't you getting briefings? If you're so concerned about security, why aren't you getting updates every day? If I was a member of the House of Representatives, I would take interest in this. Leaders check into things. You pay attention to the cops who do security when you walk in the building. Every place I've ever worked, I talk to people doing security to see how they're doing, what's going on. It doesn't take much time. It just takes leadership, something lacking in D.C. These frauds. Wow. Toss aside the guard. Photo op over. Fraudulent narrative about armed insurrection in the Capitol. Done. We've accomplished what we needed. Just toss them aside like yesterday's garbage. Folks, this is the governance we have, and it will only get worse. Well done, governors of New Hampshire and Florida recalling their troops, as well as Governor Abbott in Texas. Never, ever, ever voluntarily surrender your guardsmen to do anything that the national government wants to do. Make them federalize and order your troops there if they're going to commit fraud like this and treat our service members in such a ruddy, shabby fashion. Thanks a lot, folks, for your patronage and your time. God bless. And, man, keep your stick on the ice. We're all pulling for each other. Jeez.